Hi, I'm Dr. Rahatir, and I'm going to talk to you about dating strategies. Let me begin by saying that depending on whether we may finish high school or go to college or graduate school, we may spend 18 to 25 years in school. Out of all these years of education, we do not learn a basic skill set for dating and mating. This talk is an overview of our ebook, Seven Principles of Dating. It's a chapter from our book, Your Soul's Partner, Seven Steps to a Relationship of Bliss. The goal of the Seven Principles of Dating is to provide a quick and inexpensive read on seven principles that we believe will help you be successful in dating that can lead to mating. Let's begin. So what are the seven principles? The first principle is to know yourself. The second principle is to put a plan into action. The third is to be conscious. The fourth, value yourself. The fifth, value who you date. The sixth is to take your time, and the seventh is to have fun. So the first principle is to know yourself. The African proverb, know thyself, is probably the most important principle for conscious dating. The questions you might want to ask yourself include, who am I? What issues am I struggling with? And how are they playing out in my relationships and in my life? What is important to me? What are my moral values and principles? What are my strengths and weaknesses? And what are my gifts? Knowing yourself helps you to be clear about what you are bringing to a relationship and what you need to work on so that you can have clarity about who is the right person for you. The second principle of dating is to put a plan in action. Most people put their time, money, and energy into things that are important to them. So prioritizing meeting your soul partner means that you must make this just as important as anything else in your life. And this translates into investing your time, money, and energy into meeting people, which means taking time out of your life to meet people and date. So the second principle of dating then is to develop a plan and put it into action. Now this can be done in several ways. The first thing you want to do is let people in your life know that you're available. You may already be acquainted with your soul's partner, but they do not know you're available. He or she may already be among your friends, associates, or co-workers. And when your family, friends, and associates and co-workers know you are available, they may begin to think about people they know and send them your way. You can also meet people through places you attend regularly, like your job, church, or community organizations you're affiliated with. And one of the things you might really want to think about is considering a matchmaking company. Some of them do cost, but if you have, extra money, then you might really want to spend money, since this is really important to you. Spend money on getting a matchmaking company to help you, because a lot of these companies do extensive background interviews to obtain information that helps you to match you with the right person. They also provide other services, including how to dress and all kinds of things. The third principle is to be conscious. And although there's continuous research reveals how complex the human brain is, and a lot more research is being done to understand its complexity, Paul MacLean's triune brain theory may be useful for increasing awareness of which brain may be dominating when making choices in our lives, particularly around dating and relationships. According to the triune brain theory, 3 areas of the brain include the reptilian brain, the limbic brain, and neocortex. And essentially, these are really the physical survival brain, the emotional brain, and then the intellectual brain. And so when we look at the reptilian brain, or the physical survival brain, is based on instinctive behaviors like feeding, fighting, fleeing, and it includes aggression, dominance, territoriality, and ritual display. So these are behaviors that are necessary for survival and safety. Then the emotional brain is a part of the brain that's responsible for memory, and the emotion and behavior involved in the acquisition of food for feeding, reproductive behavior, procreation, parenting, maternal love, things of that nature. The emotional brain is responsible for behaviors that are essential for survival of the species. Now, the intellectual brain is the source of language, reason and logic, as well as planning and processing of culture and traditions. The intellectual brain is responsible for behaviors associated with survival of the tribe or the group. Now, this depends on the health of the culture. For example, a materialistic focused culture is going to be radically different from a spiritually focused culture, and it's going to affect the choices we make. But the single most important thing is that you want to pay attention. And so being conscious means paying attention to which brain is in the driver's seat. Now there's also the spiritual brain. This is the part of the brain that's associated with consciousness. It's associated with some of the attributes outlined here on this slide. It takes time to develop and a lot of work has to be done. But if you look at some of the attributes on this slide, it includes things like managing your anger and your emotions, learning from your experiences, relating cause and effect, making moral and ethical judgments, making conscious decisions, things of that nature. So when you're seeking a partner, then you want to make sure that you're being more conscientious. You want to make sure that brain is in the driver's seat. The fourth principle of dating is to value yourself. And so there are some personality characteristics that can be a turnoff and make it challenging for people who are dating. So one of them is low self-esteem and low self-confidence. And of course, a number of things can contribute to low self-esteem. For example, our childhood, how family and friends treat us, and particularly ideals perpetuated in society. In materialistic driven societies shaped by race, class, and gender hierarchies, women are supposed to be physically attractive, men are supposed to be wealthy and powerful. So for a lot of us, wherever we are on that beauty and wealth hierarchy can have some effect on how we feel about ourselves. You also don't want to come off as being too needy, because if you come off as being too needy, you might be seen as a liability. And if a person does not feel they can adequately fulfill whatever it is that you seem to be needy on, they will flee. Being too needy can really kill the potential for a relationship. Being desperation shows energetically. When a man or a woman appears to be too desperate or appears to be desperate, it can shut down the other person's natural response. They may feel pulled in too fast, and it does not give them the chance to freely explore whether they really want to be in a relationship with you. Being a sourpuss, what we mean by this is that someone who seems uninterested, unattentive, and non-engaging, and might not have much to say, but when they do say something, occasionally it may be short and negative. They may also lack a sense of humor. So you don't want to be a sourpuss. Being a drama king or queen, and maybe what we mean by this is that people who over-dramatize events in their lives. Being lively can be attractive to some people, but there's good and bad drama, and nobody wants bad drama. A factor contributing to bad drama is when we engage in physical and or emotional intimacy too early in the dating process. Because our expectations increase when we engage in intimacy too early in the process, it can agitate recent emotional wounds and open us up to old ones. So to cut down a potential drama, it's important to be cognizant of time in the dating process, which we'll get to in a. Being bitter, underlying bitterness often is anger stemming from hurt or disappointment one may be still struggling to recover from. Contributing to anger may be experiences from repeating dating patterns that are not working. So if you're still recovering from old wounds, it might be better to put off dating until you have healed enough to permit you to date in a healthy way. Being emotionally unavailable or too available. Some of us are emotionally unavailable because we want to avoid being hurt. Others, on the other hand, are too emotionally available too early in the dating process. So it's important to learn how to balance the emotional aspects of ourselves. Being egotistical, some people have an exaggerated sense of themselves, which can be just as much as a turnoff as someone with low self-confidence. Egomaniacs come off as self-centered and more focused on themselves, which can be a turnoff for some people. So these are not all the personality characteristics that make it challenging for, if you possess them, to make it challenging for people to date you. But we all have work that we need to do, and so if you know that you need to do some work, then you need to go in and do the work so that you can get yourself ready for a potential partner. The fifth principle is to value who you date. And how you do this is that what you want to do is make the person feel valued. That this means that when they are in your presence, you are paying attention and letting other things go for the moment, including your cell phone. You are the looking glass, which means that people generally look for a reflection of themselves or what they might want to be. So if they get clues about, so they get clues about who they are by the way you respond to them. So if you're responding to them negatively, or you're acting like you're not interested, then it makes them feel bad about themselves. And so you want to be attentive and be present. The other way is to listen. Many of us are good talkers, but we're not good listeners. So what you want to do is hone your listening skills. You could probably learn as much as about a person as you will throughout the course of dating them by listening intently in the first 15 minutes of the first conversation. If you're a talker, talk less and give the other person a chance to talk and share themselves, and it shows them that you are not just self-interested, but you're interested in who they are. And how do you show interest? You want to look them in the eyes, smile, things like that. You don't want to judge. If you do so, stop judging people based on negative experiences in previous relationships. Each person should be judged by their own merit. If you use the strategies outlined throughout this work, then and take your time, then there's no need to worry about being hurt or disappointed. And then last, you want to be courteous, kind, and show appreciation. Know that nobody has to give you anything, including their time. Anything someone does for you is a gift. You should always show appreciation. And when someone does something nice for you, acknowledge it. And acknowledging a gift can be done by a simple smile and a thank you. The sixth principle of dating is to take your time. And one of the things that we want to understand, first of all, is intimacy. And so there are 4 levels of intimacy. When we talk about intimacy, we're talking about sharing yourself. So there's physical intimacy, which is the sharing of your body. That's driven primarily by physical attraction. Emotional intimacy is the sharing of your feelings and your emotions. Mental is sharing of your thoughts and ideals about various aspects of the world, for example, political, social, and so forth. And this is typically undergirded by worldview, values, and beliefs, which are further influenced by social conditioning and level of education, both formal and informal. Spiritual intimacy is a sharing of oneself at a deeper level, which may depend on the level to which there is connectedness on the other 3 levels of intimacy. And it also, of course, includes sharing our religious and spiritual beliefs. So, principle 6 still is that there are 4 stages of dating. This is something else you want to take into consideration. And this is probably one of the most critical aspects of dating, is to take your time. All phenomena goes through a time process. Planets undergo cosmic time, earthly beings undergo vital time, nature undergoes natural time, and social systems go through a process of time that consists of 4 stages. The first stage is the beginning of things. The seed, the idea, is considered the period of conception. The second stage is birth, the formation stage. The third stage is maturity, and the 4th stage is the transformation or death stage. But dating also goes through a time process. So the problem is that some people engage in physical intimacy too early in the dating process without going through or without connecting emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. And what happens when you do this is that it prevents the natural unfolding of getting to know a person, which may in turn lead to the death of the relationship before it has a chance to be born, mature, and transform into something higher. And believe it or not, some of us go through this process in one day. And so you want to take your time as you're going through and recognize that you are going through a process and be cognizant of where you are in that process. So for stage 1 is the conception stage. And so during the conception stage, which really is about attraction, and it's the idea that, there's something here, I want to check this out. And so things you want to consider is the purpose of dating, who will pay, and where you will meet. So one of the things you have that first conversation that you want to pay attention to is the reason why people are dating. Some of us, many of us date with the hopes of meeting someone to share our lives with, but for others, they're just dating for fun, to occupy their time, or for sex. So the first step then is to be clear about why you are dating yourself and then listen carefully to those who are dating so you can be clear about why they are dating. The other one, second consideration is who will pay. Of course, people have different ideals about that, and because some people think whoever initiates a date should pay for it, while others believe that the man should pay for it. A strategy might be to have a discussion about it. However, the risk of doing this is that you may lead to discussions that delve into worldview and values around gender roles too early in the dating process. So you don't want to get in too deeply into your worldviews and values too early in the process. So to avoid having such a discussion before the first date, you could opt to do something that does not cost money. For example, visit a bookstore, park, or museum. Another strategy could be to just go on the date and then let it work itself out. And both parties show a willingness to make a contribution and do this until you are comfortable with having a discussion about it. The third consideration is where you will meet, and this depends on the purpose of the date. If you want to find out more about the person to see if he or she has potential, then you might opt to meet where you can talk, for example, in a park or a place to have coffee or tea. So we're still in the conception or attraction stage. So these are some other strategies you want to consider in the dating process. And we also now still at the take your time. First thing you want to consider is to make sure to avoid physical intimacy too early in the process. And you also want to avoid alcohol because it causes people to let their defenses down. And we all know that two people who are attracted to each other, you put two people who are attracted to each other together alone, it makes it too easy for them to do what most comes natural, and that's to become physically intimate, especially if the attraction is strong. So no matter how tempting it may be, you really might want to try to meet at a public place where you will not be alone. And this is also good for safety. Be your best self. Some people, I've had people say, well, people were just showing their representative. Well, why would they not do that? It means that you're being the best of who you are. And the idea is that when you present your best self, the person has a chance to get to know and grow and love that person. When they grow to love that side of your personality, they may be inclined to be more tolerant of you when you're not at your best, as long as that side of the personality is not so bad that it detracts dramatically from the best of who you are. The questions to ask yourself are, who is my best self? How am I when I am this person? How often is it that this self is present? If this side of yourself is not present the majority of the time, then what is preventing him or her from being present? And what can you do to bring him or her out more? How can you, and most of all, how can you practice your best self so that it becomes habitual? You want to manage your expectations. Having false and unrealistic expectations can kill the potential for a relationship. Some of us have to do with where we are in the dating process and issues that you may be dealing with. So even after the first few dates, you still should have no expectations because you have not made any commitment. And then if you find that you do not have mutual interest for continuing to explore the possibility of an intimate relationship, then you might find that the person has potential for something other purpose in your life, for example, a business alliance, confidant, a mentor, or a friend. Don't chase. Let the person know you're interested without chasing or being overly aggressive, which can come off as being smothering or forceful, or turn the person off. Clean up your house. It's difficult for someone to see you if they cannot get past seeing how disorganized and unclean and chaotic your house is. And cleaning up your house also means cleaning up your physical, psycho, emotional, and spiritual houses. Leave the baggage at home. Most of us, some of us have baggage, some of us have suitcases, and some of us have trunks. So you want to leave the baggage at home. Nobody wants a liability. It's important to do the work necessary to heal from the wounds of the mind, body, and spirit. Pay attention to the small stuff. Many of us would be surprised at to learn how simple and expensive some of the things that people value are, and how easy it is to make some people happy. Be aware that money isn't everything. This is especially important for men who think that having and spending money is all it takes to make a person happy. Only a woman who does not think much about herself will date a man only for his money. And many women have their own money, do not need a man for that, although it's important that he has his own so that he is not a drain on hers. So, and then the last thing you want to do is keep it moving. This means to continue to date other people. It's particularly important for women because some women stop dating once they have met someone who has gotten their attention. And so while they are waiting, men are having all the fun. So you want to keep it moving, which keeps you from being too focused on whether a person is interested in you and from becoming disappointed if they're not. Intimacy, here we're still in the attraction stage, and here you still want to keep it light. The thing about physical intimacy is that there's an energetic exchange, and if you have that kind of exchange without higher levels of intimacy, it can make you feel exposed and vulnerable. Emotional intimacy, at this stage, you still want to keep that light. You don't want to get emotionally involved with somebody you don't really know. And a lot of times what happens that because we enter into physical intimacy prematurely, it leads us to have emotional intimacy, and then we begin making decisions based on emotions that are derived from physical intimacy. And so again, it's important to not invest our feelings into a person before getting to know them. And mental, it's important also not to get into deep conversations that delve into your worldview and values, as it might turn you off before getting to know the person. You may not share some views and values, but that they might not be enough to prevent the development of a relationship. So some things you don't want to talk about are sex, ex-partners, politics and religion, and problems in your life. In terms of sex, you don't want to have conversations about sex on the first date and early in the dating process. And particularly for women, if a man brings sex up on the first date, he's just testing to see if you're open to it. If you are open to it. Also, if you have rules, like for some people have 3-month rules or you're celibate and things like that, just keep it to yourself. If you start talking about that, then, or your rules, then that person may see this as a challenge and begin to focus on getting you to break your rules. You don't want to talk about ex-partners. 2 is company, 3 is a crowd. Do not talk about ex-partners or previous relationships, because the goal, remember, is to be present with the person you are with, making that person feel special. You don't want to get into talks about politics and religion. These are areas that people particularly have strong opinions about, and when you have differences in opinions on these topics, and because may cause us to become too emotional, it may deter you from further exploration. So as you continue to get to know each other, you may find that you have other things in common and that you have more in common in these areas as well, and or that you may be able to live with your differences. You don't want to get into problems about your life. When you focus on problems in your life, you may be perceived as being too needy and or a liability, and nobody wants to take on a liability. And it could be a turnoff for people to have to hear about your personal problems before getting to know your good qualities. So you might be perceived as a person with too much baggage rather than a person who has a lot to offer. And then spiritually, people can feel spiritually connected without even trying. However, it is important to distinguish between spiritual attraction and physical attraction, because physical attraction may make people feel that they are experiencing a spiritual attraction. And it can be blinding and lead to physical intimacy. You also don't want to get into deep conversations again about religion. However, because people have strong ideas about this, and our ideas about religion, however, may have nothing to do with spirituality, but they are thought to, by many people, be one and the same thing. So if you delve into conversations about religion too early in the dating process, you might find that your ideals about religion are radically different without knowing that although you do not share the same religious ideas and beliefs, you share the same spiritual values. And this can deter you from further exploration. So the second stage is the birth or commitment stage. Birth in the time process, and dating translates into commitment in relationships. And commitment translates into we're going to give it a try. So what are you saying? What you are saying is that there is enough that makes a person worthy of your commitment, and to see if he or she is worth exploring potentially for marriage. So this is the stage at which a commitment is made by both parties to explore each other at deeper levels. A significant task at the birth stage or commitment is how you will interact together. And the way to, what you might consider is an open discussion about expectations, and to set ground rules for how you're going to interact. Some things you might to be discussed include the importance of being truthful and being able to self-disclose without being judged, what commitment means to each of you, including exclusivity and fidelity, your expectation with regard to physical intimacy, and how you're expected to interact socially with each other and with family members and friends. And that touchstone can be a place to return to when the misunderstandings arise. The task at the commitment stage is, you can disclose more about yourself. You should continue to put your best foot forward and be the best of who you can be. Still, at this stage, you can also show more of who you are, even when you're not at your best. And although you can reveal more about yourself, it's important to avoid taking each other for granted. You should continue to do the things that you did at the conception stage so that you're able to sustain the relationship to the next stage. You also might consider meeting family and friends, getting to know each and observing family members and friends and how you both interact with them helps to learn more about each other, and also to learn whether or not you think you're going to be compatible, because family and friends can break or make a relationship. Because you get involved in a relationship, and when you get married, it's not just you and that person marrying, you're also marrying their family and their friends, and so it's important to see how you get along with each other. Intimacy too, you might want to share more of yourselves on all levels. For physical intimacy, you still need to consider what you can and cannot handle, and it might be wise to continue using strategies suggested for the conception stage to avoid the temptation to move to physical intimacy without moving through mental, emotional, and spiritual intimacy. For mental intimacy, you can also begin to explore your worldview and values. For emotional, explore your feelings for each other. You might disclose more personal things about yourselves, things that you would not normally share with just anyone. And although you may feel more comfortable sharing problems, it's still important to not dump all your problems onto each other, because even in marriage, even if you get to further stages in the relationship, a partner is someone to be supportive. They are not responsible for your problems or your healing. So you want to be careful not to give off the impression that you, again, are an emotional liability. For spiritual intimacy, you can share your ideals and beliefs about religion. You should be careful not to impose your beliefs on each other. The objective is to explore each other's beliefs, whether or not you are of the same faith, as you might find that you are able to have a relationship in spite of religious differences, as long as you both understand the necessity of spirituality for spiritual and relationship health. So now the next stage is maturity, and this is the engagement stage. Maturity in relationships translate into engagement, or can, and this is a stage at which you might decide to marry. The key tasks are not only to continue to explore and share as the relationship matures and unfolds, but to also engage in activities like counseling, self-help books, and things like that to find out your levels of physical, emotional, mental, social, and spiritual compatibility. We have a chapter about that in our book, Your Soul's Partner. So you definitely want to do more exploration to see the levels of compatibility in the areas that you're not compatible in. For those areas in which you find that you're compatible, that you're incompatible, this is the time to explore whether you are willing to respect your differences and engage in practices that show your willingness to do so. And if you find that it's too difficult to get along in areas in which you are incompatible, this may be time to terminate the relationship, because it's better to terminate the relationship at this stage than it is to get married and have to terminate it later. And then the last stage of the sixth principle of marriage is transformation, and that, of course, is marriage. And transformation in marriage translates to marriage. If you do not seek to marry, then it may mean the death of a relationship, at least of an intimate one. And if you decide to marry, although the relationship continues to mature, it begins a new process that also goes through 4 stages, or go through the 4-stage time process with different challenges, many of which revolve around children and how to live together. So the 4-stage process, the 4th stage process begins with first the conception, the idea that you're married, the physical reality, we are married. Then the second is birth, of the marriage itself and how you mature through mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual as a result of living together and after the birth of the first child, or if you already have already existing children. The third is maturity, making it past the challenges faced by areas of incompatibility in children, family, and all the things that go on as a result when you're married. Happens as you evolve as individuals with your own goals and destinies and as you evolve together. And then transformation of the marriage is to the point where the challenges level off and you know and accept each other's shortcomings and your differences, and then you move the relationship to a higher level, or to the death of the marriage, relationship through divorce or death of a partner. There's also a continual cycle of highs and lows based on daily interaction and life events. In terms of intimacy, during engagement and when you marry, intimacy on all levels deepens. If you do not make the necessary adjustments and do not work through the work that is necessary to sustain physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual intimacy, it may lead to the end of the relationship before you marry, or an unhappy, unfulfilling marriage. The marriage may then transform to a dead marriage where you stay together because of financial ties, children, or other reasons. The other outcome may be the death of the marriage through divorce. And if the work is done to sustain all these levels of intimacy during the marriage might transform to a higher level until the death of one of the spouses. The seventh principle of dating is to have fun. Meeting your soul's partner is serious business, as the person you choose to share your life with is probably the single most important decision that you can make. However, do not be so serious that you take the joy out of it. Being easy and having fun increases your attractiveness, and people are drawn to attractive people. People are drawn to those who like to have fun, because it helps them to relax and have fun. So if you make finding your soul's partner a priority and are dating with skills, you will be successful. So be serious about finding your soul's partner, but also have fun doing so.